What's up, Ed Boys? Today, we'll be talking about a different kind of game. A game where you're encouraged to use your noggin. A game introduced to me by a man known as Splattercat, and a game I then proceeded to know life for about 2 months. Battle Brothers is a turn-based strategy RPG mix where you lead your band of mercenaries full of peasants, hunters, knights, and other degenerates. Mercenary work is like a sandwich. No matter which way you turn it, the bread always comes first. Your goal first and foremost is to make that dough, that quiche, that cheddar. And for most of the game, this is what you'll be focusing on, since you'll be using that gold to replace all of your mercs that keep dying on missions. Come on guys, we've got a job here, and it's much harder when you keep falling over dead. But of course, you should try to keep all of your guys alive, or at least all of the ones that have any potential. Every person has their own traits, stats, and stars that are assigned to them. Characters earn XP through participating in battles, and once they level up, you can choose to level up a perk and 3 stats that can be ranked up by a random amount. This is where the stars come in. They will always add a point towards that stat depending on the number of stars allocated. Of course, your characters can roll decently high every time without these stars, but it seems more likely that I'll be struck by lightning while trying to pull Venti in Genshin Impact. So force your weak brothers into early retirement to make room for some real men. And look up some builds for perk allocation while you're at it, since there are 50 perks and only a maximum of 10 perk points. Each character background has a minimum and a maximum of each stat that they can roll. Generally speaking, the more expensive ones will have the ability to roll a lot higher. One of the best and most expensive character backgrounds you'll want to be hiring are Hedge Knights, or the medieval versions of the T-1000. Hulking towers of pure muscle who strangle goblins for fun and on a normal day, and 4 bloodlines bench 8 plates and beat the absolute shit out of each other. So, when you fill your ranks with these guys, you'll want to keep at least 1 monk with you. Now you may ask, why would you want to keep this soy boy amongst these mountain men? Well, because there exists an event where these 2 Hedge Knights decide to Captain America Civil War each other, and this has a few outcomes. 1. Pay them each a small fortune so they won't murder each other. 2. One of them actually murders the other, and he will actually die, and you actually won't be able to use him anymore, since he's now food for the Lindworms. But hey, at least you spent 7,000 gold to get 2 stat points. 3. You get the rest of the brothers to wrestle the men apart, and in turn, the rest of your company gets roughed up in the process. Or 4. Your monk calmly walks up to Brian Shaw and Eddie Hall beating the absolute fuck out of each other, and draws some symbols in the air, and the 3 start having a chat over a pint of beer despite missing all of their teeth. There's some real pride as you mold this soft and partially retarded brother into the medieval equivalent of Rich Piana. Rest in peace, big man. Sending him in to enemy lines and watching him come back with 8 times as many heads than he went in with. But of course, before that you'll have to be wary of just about everything. Like these things. And those things. And even your own brothers, who are liable to friendly fire him with AoE swing attacks and arrows to the back of the skull. But once you've invested enough blood, sweat, and cum, no force on earth will stop you. Unless it's goblins. Fuck goblins. This game also has a few DLC expansions, and you'll probably want to buy these. The free Lindworm DLC adds Lindworms, really big bipedal snakes that spray acid. Beasts in Exploration adds more beasts, legendary locations, crafting, armor customization, and contracts. The Warriors of the North DLC adds Northern Barbarians, Company Origins, champions who are upgraded enemies that always carry unique items, and even more equipment. And the Blazing Deserts DLC adds brown people. Get them all for the best experience. The Overworld map is procedurally generated, and in the beginning, you'll want to stick to towns instead of roughing it in the wild. But as your brothers get more and more deadly, you'll want to venture out and raid enemy locations and claim their lucrative treasures. There are a couple of legendary items that you'll be able to find on every playthrough, and famed items have improved stats that can absolutely demolish your enemies. Once you encounter either a location or an enemy party, you will enter the battlefield. Sometimes you'll find that you'll be ambushed, especially in forests at night, and the enemies will then spawn in surrounding you with basically no chance at escape. The combat takes place on a hexagonal grid, which is a little strange since you put your brothers in rows, so one row is kinda off kilter, but once you're on the battlefield, utilizing terrain may prove to be the difference between glorious victory and being overrun by 36 fucking orcs. Sometimes there will be obstacles on the battlefield which may impede vision and movement. The raised hexes provide both offensive and defensive bonuses to anybody occupying said space. So obviously, if you can take them before the enemy does, you'll want to, maybe even taking multiple raised hexes. If you initiated a fight on a mountain, then maybe you should sit on these really big hills. What should you do if the enemy has claimed a giant hill? Well, if it's just one spot, shield bash that fucker and take his spot. However, if they're on a hill in an encampment, I sure hope you brought the equivalent of 3 John Wicks, otherwise they will proceed to kick the shit out of you. I recommend a tactical retreat and to lure a different group of enemies to do the heavy lifting for you. But assuming the battle doesn't go too well, you'll come out with brothers wearing broken armor and multiple injuries ranging from split hands to grazed kidneys. Hopefully you've got a stockpile of gold to pay your dues, plenty of tools to repair your equipment, and medical supplies to heal those injuries, along with plenty of food. So, you know, you don't starve to death. If you thought XCOM was bullshit, just wait until you play this game. Statistically speaking, I suppose it is plausible and quite possible that I would miss a 60% chance to hit 6 times in a row. But this is also statistically a load of crap. But it's stupid in both ways, because I rolled the hit on a 5% chance and proceeded to do it twice in a row. Although, last time I checked, anything above 85% is basically 100%. The math just works out here. Just when you start to think that you and the homies might survive this hellhole, you'll be hit with one of the 4 late game crises. They are the Undead Scourge. Your ancestors are disappointed by your poor life choices, decided to come fuck your shit up. The Greenskin Invasion is the invasion of all of the collective green people, or more commonly known as orcs and goblins. The Holy War is a 1-for-1 recreation of the Holy Crusades, except this time, the heathens are armed with guns and fucking mortars. Siding with the Crusaders is also way harder, since all of the Southerners love to throw sand directly into your eyes every single turn. And finally, the Noble War is where all the various noble houses in your game decide it's time to do what Europeans have been doing for millennia. But that's not all. Assuming you play the game for long enough, you will inevitably have to deal with all 4 of the late game crises. Then after you've survived all 4, they will continue to cycle again and again until you either die or retire. The quote-unquote tutorial origin for the game is the rebuilding a company start. Basically, helpful guidance is provided, although it can technically be ignored. But if you're going to ignore the help, then why even bother choosing this start? The new company and Southern Mercenary start are essentially identical, except one spawns you at the bottom of the map. Both provide a quick start to the game without any advantages, but without any disadvantages either. Start off with 3 men and have the standard 12 men in battle, and 20 men total. The Peasant Militia Origin starts you off with 12 men with the ability to take up to 16 whole dudes into a fight, with a maximum of 25 Mercs in your party. Now this sounds great, since more men means more ability to dish out and absorb damage. The problem is that after being used as fodder for the bourgeoisie, you are only able to hire fellow unwashed proletariats. So this means no hedge knights, no sword masters, no sellswords, and no actually good character backgrounds. The best class you are able to hire are militiamen, and even then, they tend not to fare very well against some of the later enemies. The game also scales based on how many people you have in your company, and since you start off with 12 dudes, you'll be facing off against people who can easily 1v4. I recommend only keeping the decent ones to start off with, and hiring the surgeon as soon as possible. The ability for all brothers to survive 1 guaranteed death will make your money go much further as you struggle to keep anybody alive. If you happen to find good men with good stars, however, you'll find that you can steamroll just about everything in the entire game. The Band of Poachers Origin starts you off with 3 ranged characters and lets you move faster on the map and see more scouting information. but you can carry less items in your inventory, as well as less tools and medical supplies. Be sure to stop off in town to hire some frontline fodder and you'll be peachy. The Trading Caravan Origin means that you get 10% better buying and selling prices, but you start with 0 renown and earn it at 66% the normal rate. Pretty boring if you ask me, but hey, if you want to play medieval trucking simulator, then be my guest. The Deserter's Origin lets you act first on the very first round of combat, so kinda useful. You start off with 3 brothers with a deserter background, all with decent equipment. You also get no renown hit for retreating, and you start off with one of the noble houses not very happy with you. While this sounds like a very quick way to end a campaign, if you play it smart, you can use this to gear up fast. The Northern Raiders Origin starts you off with 3 experienced barbarians, and also a monk. All of them are friggin' amazing, and can carry you all the way to late game. You also start off with 2 of the noble houses mad at you, so pillage supply caravans and get that armor. You can also loot destroyed armor and weapons off your enemies. Normally, when attacking somebody, you have to crack their hard armor shell in order to get to their creamy nougat center. Weapons and armor used by enemies have lower chances of dropping the lower their durability, and normally won't drop when fully destroyed. Sometimes, but not all the times, but sometimes you'll be able to get that heavy armor from that knight you just beat to death. Because there's no way in hell you're going to dagger him to death while he's busy decapitating all of your mercs. The Manhunter's Origin is similar to the Peasant Militia, where you can take up to 16 people into battle with you with a total of 25 in your roster. But if less than half of your roster is made up of indebted, then everyone else will get mad that you don't have enough slaves. For those of you who don't know, indebted are slaves, and just about anybody you can fight can be captured and forced to fight for you. With this origin, they're capped off at level 7 and earn 25% less XP. And, if struck down, will always die. The Davkol Cultist's Origin is the most unique out of all of the starts. Starting off with 4 cultists, you'll need to sacrifice one of your brothers every so often to appease your god Davkol. Doing so will make your non-cultist brothers understandably very unhappy, and will be very quick to leave you so that your cultists don't Fortnite dance over their flayed corpses. You'll be able to recruit a lot more cultists than you normally would. You can also convert brothers who meet certain criteria. Basically, they have to be lowborn peasants and cannot have the smart trait. So no hedge knights for you. Although, if the brother has the dumb trait, or if the brother has happened to suffer brain damage in some way, you'll be able to recruit them. Brain damage is one of the permanent injuries that your brothers can gain instead of dying, and are usually quite detrimental, except brain damage. You take a 25% hit to initiative and experience gain with a 15% increase to resolve. So coincidentally, all of my hedge knights dropped all of their armor because someone smeared butter all over their gear, and then proceeded to charge straight into a horde of zombies with no gear because mama didn't raise no bitch. And if they don't end up with brain damage, then the game mysteriously closes itself until they do, and shortly thereafterward, join my gaggle of goons. Sacrifices can give your cultist brothers these candle flames, with each rank giving buffs to their stats, with one of them becoming the Prophet of Davkol after gaining 6 candle flames. Giving them this ability allows them to reduce the fatigue of all of your brothers by 10, which is muy excelente. I won't spoil too much, but this start makes it much easier to get a specific legendary armor, and let's just say that armor's pretty good. And just remember, the Beast Slayer's Origin starts you off with 3 decent brothers, each with the Beast Slayer background. I know, who in the world could have guessed that? You can see tracks from farther away, and get more loot from beasts, and pay more for everything, since nobody likes hillbillies who are hootin' and hollerin' while running after a group of unholds. The Gladiator Origin starts you off with 3 experienced gladiators, each with their own unique trait. They are also super freaking expensive, and you can only have 12 men total in your roster, and if all of your original gladiators die, then you automatically lose the game. The Lone Wolf Origin starts you off with 1 man, a hedge knight with great equipment, and if he happens to die will also end your campaign. You also cannot have more than 12 men total in your roster, so no extra men in reserve for you. The difficulty of this origin doesn't lie in the early game. Your knight obliterates everything, and even has an event where a squire can join him. The difficulty lies in the fact that you can only have 12 men, and these 12 men have to deal with everything in the game, ranging from unhold to tree men, and of course this also applies to the Gladiator start. The problem with this is that this leaves you very little flexibility when fighting. You have to slow down since you can no longer tag out brothers who have sustained injuries or damage with someone in reserve, because there is no reserve. Sometimes you want to bring archers into battle, such as against noble armies where you want to take out their crossbowmen and back rank damage dealers more effectively. But against orcs, archers are near useless, because orc warriors care very little about just about everything, and can also do this, rendering your archers useless. You could make hybrid classes, both skilled in range and melee, but I don't use them because good luck finding the right guys. The other option is to have archers available, but selectively choose not to bring them into battle. This means that they won't get injured, but you're also willingly going in at less than full strength. The third option is to forego archers entirely and run with 12 melee brothers, and this is the strategy that I use. Just outmaneuver and hope you can kill some of the backline enemies very quickly. Everything about this game is frankly amazing. The loading and title screens of this game are definitely wallpaper or poster material. Not to mention the music. The music in this game is incredible, with fights against certain enemies having their own musical scores. It's amazing how they created such distinct and frankly hype as fuck music for the different scenarios you find yourself in, but still somehow encapsulate the overall feel of the game. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just go play the game and come back to me in about 100 hours. Half of the reason I continue to fight low level bandits late game is to listen to the music. This game knows what its goals are and does them very well. The writing for the events for this game you'll want to read, not like other games where you'll just find yourself skipping and skipping and skipping. That is assuming you have a brain that is more developed than a goldfish, and are willing to wait for a reward rather than seeking instant gratification. Despite the lack of an overarching story, this game pulled me in and made me feel immersed. From going to taverns to learn about special equipment to the filler events just to build up this gritty world, it made me go to the wiki and read every single event in one sitting, instead of studying for my finals. My personal favorite event is one where you can save a man from being gutted by his fellow villagers because he did some unspeakable things to a melon. But once you play the game for long enough, things can get repetitive, and late game, you'll roll through just about everything. Check out some of the mods, and maybe, if you're particularly smart, mess around with the game files yourself. Or you could just tackle the bosses, or just load up another new campaign and play with the new mechanics. I've played this game for quite some time now and still haven't played through all the scenarios very far. This game is great. There's so much in this game, and no joke, it took me about 250 hours to realize that these spiders have an idle animation. I'm pretty sure that no other sprite does, but who knows. This game has so many events, locations, and items that I doubt I've even seen them all. I hope you like reading, because there's a lot of text in this game. This game isn't for everyone, but if you have the same frequency of autism that I do, then you'll love this game. I give this game the amount of times I went, "What the fuck is that thing?" over how many brothers that thing proceeded to kill. Try and figure out if that's a low or high number. Check me out on Twitch, sub, all the stuff, and see you later.